Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the NRW. I'm your host, Rob Medina, and I thank you all very much for joining me here today. Now, I've actually uploaded a review for the film that I'm about to get into here earlier this week, and I wasn't really too happy with the review and how it came out. And then other things along the way had come about that I realized I needed to change some stuff because the film that I'm going to get into here is called Frog. I love this film, and for anyone who's seen reviews, for reviews I've done here on the channel, whenever I get an opportunity to bring up this film, I do so every time. And the reason is because of the actor Tom Hallam, because a lot of the reviews I do for B22, Tom Hallam is featured in those films, and he's actually the main star of this movie in Frog, which is the character he plays. I saw this movie last year for the first time in my preparation with my conversation with Tom Hallam on my show, You're So Cool with Rob Medina. And when I saw this movie, I was blown away with the film. Like, I was in love with this movie. And I reached out to Tom Hallam and I said to him, I found Frog. I love this movie and I'm a huge fan of you now. And he was blown away that I found this little short film. And when we had a conversation about the movie on my show, he had told me there that you should talk to Patricia Aiken. She is the writer and director of the film. She would love to hear the story and love to hear more of your thoughts on the film. And so, is it cool that I link you guys up? I was like, absolutely. So we had the opportunity to do that, and I had an conversation with the writer director of Frog and Patricia Aiken on my show. So by the time this episode or this review, I meant to say, uploads, either the review, I'm sorry, the conversation with Patricia Aiken will have already been uploaded or will be uploaded later that day or the following day. So hopefully it all work out. This conversation that I had with Patricia, out of all the conversations I've had, and I had several that had major impact on me, a lot of them did, but this is the one that I felt the most impact for me personally in various ways. But it obviously stems from the movie Frog because there's so much about this film that I took away from it. And when I talked to Tom on my show last year, I told him that when I saw the movie, I almost cried. I never cried to the film, but I've been very close to doing so because the movie's so powerful, in my opinion. It's going to sound kind of cliche for me to talk like this, but this movie was magical. And I think this movie, in my opinion, is a perfect film. I don't give a shit what anyone else think. I think this is a perfect movie. There's so many great things about this film in the cinematography, the writing, the directing, the music, the acting, the set designs, the lighting. I mean, there's so much about this film that I love that I can go on for hours about. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to do that here. So I thought the best way I can do the review for this film is to do it in the form of a commentary where I would talk over the movie. You're not going to see me at that point when I get into the film here. So I'm not going to go into my standard fare where I'll do the plot synopsis, positives, negatives, and then my rating. I can tell you right now that the rating for this movie is a solid cheers. But I figured that this will be the best way to go about it because I want you all to see the movie. And although you won't be able to hear the film much because I'll be talking over it, but there's so much that I want to point about the film and what it is I love about the film, and then share some personal insight about some of the personal elements that I've invested with the film that I've gotten from the first time around and the 7th and 18th time around that I also gotten from my conversation with Patricia, and then having seen the film after my conversation with her gave me a whole new perspective on the film and actually a whole new level of like love for this movie too, which I didn't think was possible, but it happened. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this here. And if you guys did, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And I'll also make sure I have the links in the description down below for you guys to follow us on our social media accounts for NRW and also for my social media accounts as well too, and my show social media accounts as well in the description down below. But my guest this week is going to be Patricia, and I think this is an episode that you all should definitely check out. It's a very long one, but it's worth it. Every minute of that conversation was absolutely worth it. And I hope you guys will enjoy it and hopefully encourage you guys to check out the film Frog. So without further ado, let's get into the review for Frog. So the first time I saw the movie Frog last year, I'll be honest, not that I had any preconceived notion that it was going to be a good or bad film, but yeah, I just assumed it was just going to be a short film that I would come across, hopefully like, and then just kind of go on with my day. And when I saw this opening shot right here where you see Tom Hallam, I loved what I saw there. The lighting was so beautiful. And this actually is done by the cinematographer Mike Osmond, who was heavily influenced by Gordon Willis, who's worked with Francis Ford Coppola in films such as The Godfather Part 2, who was known for um, his lighting, where a lot of dark shots, but a very nice elements of the proper lighting in to showcase what's going on. And he was also influenced by Terrence Malick as well too. And if you look at movies like Badlands, where it has very little lighting with with wide shots, there was just so much about the way that the film looked that really appealed to me. The actress right here is Alex Gonzalez, who plays the character of Maria, who's Frog's girlfriend, played by Tom Hallam. The one thing about this show that I loved is that if you look at the lighting with Maria there, you can see you can clearly see where you can clearly see her and where you can't really see Frog that well. Because I think for me, it's kind of a metaphor that Frog is clouded with all this turmoil he's going through. And whereas Maria, on the other hand, is very set in her ways and is very confident in herself and a very beautiful person too. So you can clearly tell that there's a certain aura about her that she's fully aware that she has that shines through in that scene, in my opinion. I always thought Tom Hallam looked awesome in that hat. So in this scene, you saw that Maria is shutting him down, telling him that his aspiration to want to be becoming a writer is not realistic and you can't make any money off it. And if you want to be with me, you got to get a job. And he's obviously not too happy with that, but definitely wants to stay with her. I love this shot right here where you get to see Tom sit down and you can see all the emotions that are just going through him right now. And I thought Tom Hallam was so brilliant in that. This is a funny scene here because when I had a conversation with Patricia, she gave me the opportunity to read the script because the story of Frog is a much bigger story. But in the script, Frog just picks up all the stuff, puts stuff in the box, and walks away. But what ended up happening is that when Tom was picking up all those items there, he was trying to shove it in the box, and they just kept falling apart. And to the point where it was useless to make an attempt to try to shove it in the box. And he just said, "Fuck this," and dropped it. And she loved that so much because it had such an authenticity behind it that he was bringing to that character that she ended up keeping it. The first time I saw this short film, I saw it on Mike Osmond's channel, and I remember I can't remember what time when I saw this comment. It might have been like the 15th or 17th time I might have seen it, or maybe a little before that. But someone had commented they couldn't see the film very well, and therefore they almost felt like they almost stopped watching the movie. And I believe that Mike had mentioned that there was a reason for that because the darkness is supposed to insinuate that I guess the emotions that he was going through is just clouding his thoughts, is clouding his path, if you will. And I thought that was very effective, in my opinion. It was difficult to see certain scenes, but honestly, it didn't really bother me at all because I thought it worked very well for what we were trying to accomplish here. And I think Mike Osmond is a genius in that. And really, he's the secret ingredient to this movie as well. And the song you hear in the background is actually done by Mike Osmond's brother, David Osmond, who wrote this song specifically for this film, specifically for this scene. And Patricia had revealed that David wanted to more or less stick with a Texas country style song, and it works beautifully. This scene right here, for some reason, I remember the first time I saw it, I kept thinking about Full Metal Jacket. Because if you watch Full Metal Jacket in the beginning of the movie, well, I wouldn't say the beginning of the film, but there's a scene where Vincent D'Onofrio's character is going to kill himself in the bathroom, and then he's killing the drill instructor. It had a very blue tint to it as well that is very calming, but there's a emotional tension that was rising there that you can feel that things are very uneasy. And that's what I felt about this scene you just saw there, where Frog is writing this note, which you find out to be a suicide note. And it's the only time where he sees clarity, just like what you see right now, where he sees Maria and he loves her and he knows he can see that very clearly. But when he's back in the darkness, you're seeing that he's still stuck with his emotions and figuring out what he wants to do with himself because he's in the dark. And I thought that was done so brilliantly, in my opinion. I really do love this song. And I always felt that this scene right here, where you get Alex, who plays the character of Maria, the first couple times I saw the film, I didn't notice about her performance here. But when you look at right now where she's holding the glass of wine and she's drinking it, she clearly has this like kind of confidence in her. And in a lot of ways kind of gives the impression that she's very conceited. She's very well of her beauty. So there's a certain way that she carries herself. So I always figured that persona that she presents in a lot of ways kind of as a facade. And now that Frog has written this letter, and now you're hearing him reading it over in this voiceover here, she's starting to realize that this passion that he was all about in writing meant something to him, but it also meant to be it meant a lot for him to be with her as well, and he was conflicted. And this is a metaphor, I believe, where he's walking away from the light when he can clearly find a way to get himself out of it, but he keeps walking away from it, heading into the darkness because that's all he can see. He doesn't know anything else at this time. I love this shot of her right there, the realization of the consequences of her telling him, "You're not going to be with me because you can't get a job, or you won't get a job to support me and to support us." I thought that was very impactful, and she was phenomenal in that performance right there. And now he's laying himself on the tracks to wait for the train to run him over. I love this shot here with the boots, very dirty cowboy boots, very Texas. I love that. Now, in this upcoming shot here, you get to see this kind of like the God shot, if you will. Yeah, so as for anyone who's not aware, it's kind of like a bird's eye view. I was informed that it's meant to give a feeling that when they're drunk or seriously hungover, it's supposed to feel like the that in this case that Frog is feeling the world spinning around him. And you're going to see these shots of these kids coming up here. The first time I saw this, I immediately thought of Stand By Me, because in Stand By Me, the kids discover a dead body in the train tracks. In this movie, they find a body, but the guy's alive. And I thought these kids, I meant to say, were fantastic in this part. And believe it or not, this is actually part of a bigger story. So the story of Frog here is just a small portion of a much bigger story for a film that is hoping to come to fruition here called Redbud. And this is actually a flashback sequence here. This upcoming scene right here, this is the part that really got to me, because you see the kid is going to tell him, "Why you sleeping in the trench? You could have been killed." And the kid in the green shirt, and the kid in the blue tells him, "You're lucky. Trains doesn't run on Sundays." And the shot of Tom Holland's performance right here, his facial expression, I remember it got to me and I almost broke down and cried. And it was just so brilliant. That's where I became a fan of Tom Holland, right? That this guy is a fucking amazing actor. I was just blown away. And you're gonna see an upcoming shot here of these kids who are walking away. The kid who fist bumps a frog, he gets shoved over in other rails. I always thought it was funny. This little kid right here almost made me cry too, because right here you get to see that Frog is now, he can see things more clearly. And again, Tom's performance in this film right here showcases the, in my opinion, his brilliance about his facial expression, the body language, and the little subtle things where him walking but he's still hung over, tripping on things. You could see right here where it's going to happen right there. Those little subtle things, genius in my opinion. And the song that's playing right now is also written by David Osmond. When I first heard the song, I was completely still. I was blown away with what I heard. And I showed it to my wife. I showed it to my son. I said, "What do you think of this song?" They're like, "That's actually really good." I was like, "Isn't it? It's magical." And I'm so glad that Mike had insisted on having his brother, not insist, I shouldn't say, he had recommended to have his brother David score the film. And Patricia said, "Yeah, let's go for it." And one of the best things about the films. So there's a lot about this movie that I'm certainly not going to be able to get into here just because of time. But there's so much about this film that I remember walking away from thinking how much it had impacted me in such a short span amount of time that I really haven't had that feeling, quite frankly, since The Godfather. Oddly enough, because Gordon Willis has worked with Francis Ford Coppola, who directed and co-wrote The Godfather Part 1, 2, and 3. And I hadn't had that feeling since I saw The Godfather, which when I was, I think, 18 years old or 19 years old, if I recall correctly, when I saw it for the first time in its entirety. So I'm going to watch the film here again now. I was going to point out something about the film that I'm hoping that you guys can understand why the movie really means a lot to me. So when I first saw the movie, I connected with the character of Frog right away, especially towards the end, because there's a lot of similarities that I felt that I had that what he was going through that I felt I connected with. Not to the extent of the suicide aspect of it here at all. I never felt suicidal by any means, but I remember just understanding that turmoil that he was going through. So when I had seen the movie, there was a point in my life where I wouldn't say I was depressed because I don't think I've ever been depressed. I've been very sad before, but I've never felt depressed. At least I don't think I have. But I wasn't really happy with myself. And not to say that I wasn't happy with my family, it wasn't that. It was just that I was just not happy with myself at all. I was miserable. And there's a lot of personal elements that I'm not going to reveal here as far as why I felt miserable. But having seen this film, it sparked something in me that I hadn't felt in quite some time. It's a kind of a form of an inspiration, I think, is the best way I could describe it. And I remember like I was so happy when I saw this movie because all the different elements that you get from this film, the music, the lighting, the cinematography, it all works so well for me in my opinion, so perfectly. And I remember thinking, I want every film to make me feel this way. And I want everyone else to feel this way about this movie too. So when I had my conversation with Patricia, she had shared some wonderful insight about what led up to her making the movie because initially it was supposed to be a short film about Frog with kind of a slightly different background to his story, and then just evolved from there. And if it wasn't for the suggestion of Mike Osmond, because Patricia had tried to was actually putting a reel together for the script Redbud, and then Mike didn't like the way the lighting turned out for the Frog segment. And that video for the reel is actually available on Patricia's YouTube channel, which I highly recommend you guys do check out. It's really quite beautiful, fascinating, actually, just astonishing in my opinion. So, having gone through the journey and making this film, and her listening to Mike's suggestion about or wanting to reshoot Frog segment, and then he suggested, you can actually make a short film because you have a concise story with Frog where you can have a beginning, middle, and end more or less, and it's a strong enough story to do so. So she agreed to it, and then they ended up showing this whole film. And I'm so glad that he made that suggestion there because who knows, what if I would have ever came across Patricia's reel and had the same effect, if that reel would have the same effect on me as it did as Frog had done. I mean, I remember seeing the reel that was gorgeous. It was beautiful, it really, really was. But Frog was a film that made me connect with her story in this story that she'd written here. And when she shared me about what she was going through at the time to get this film together and what her intentions were, and other things that led up to um, putting all these pieces here together, when you listen to the conversation that I have with her on my show, I think you'll understand what I'm referring to here. But there's something about that journey that she had gone through that led up to making this film and the events that occur after making this movie because she hadn't seen the film in over a year. She had revealed to me in our conversation, and there was a point in the conversation I remember thinking that I'm glad that she went back to watch it, and then she told me she felt reignited to want to make more movies now, and I'm so glad that it's coming to fruition here for her. But here's what I wanted to share too in a personal aspect here. A while back, I had talked to somebody that I will not name because I do respect the person still, but I had shared with them before about what it is about what I wanted to do, like what my goals were. And I wanted to work in a YouTube capacity and talk about films, among other things as well, too. And this person said, it doesn't sound like a good idea because you're not going to make any money. And I listened to them. I thought, yeah, you're probably right. So then, anyways, somewhere down the line, a really good friend of mine, Steve, had asked me, would you like to do a review for an independent film for this channel called New Release Wednesdays, which is the channel you're watching right now. Now it's called Nerds for the World. And I was really excited for that. So when I saw the short film, because I remember I prepared so much to write the notes down to discuss the movie, and I was awful, horrible. So, but I'm glad I did the review because I learned a lot about myself from that. Somewhere along the way, I can't recall how it happened, but I remembered that conversation when I had this with one person who had shared their opinions about how I should not pursue that particular path as a form of like not to say that they said that the idea was stupid. It wasn't that. I guess they were thinking that I was more or less implying that I wanted to make money off of this here, which I did, but that wasn't the reason why I wanted to do it. I just want to be able to do this for a living so that way I can do what I love for the rest of my life. That's how I looked at it. And they were like, nah, you got to be realistic. Don't do that. And I listened. So when my friend Steve had asked, would you like to do a review with me? I was so happy. Like it woke something up in me. Once I had done the review, not to say I was proud of, not to say I thought it was great, but I was proud that I did it. And then as time has gone by, I stuck with this and I stuck with making reviews. Now, I wasn't good by any means in the first 50 videos that I tried to do, but I knew I got better because I stuck with it because I loved what I was doing. And then I started doing the show, You're So Cool with Rob and Dina. And then I started learning more about myself and I stuck with this passion that I started to develop that I realized I was in a lot of ways kind of suppressing. And it started coming out more and more as I started working with the channel more and more. That now the way that I converse with people has changed a lot too, because I was always interested in the finer details that I've come to realize that I thought were really important to highlight. Not necessarily about the product, but more about the person's journey. And that's what I found really interesting about Patricia's journey in making this film and the events that led up to that and the events that led up after that. So when I saw the movie again after I had my conversation with Patricia, I've said before that I've seen the movie several times and I've come close to crying and I never did. But the first time, for the first time, I meant to say I cried to the movie because there was an amalgamation of things that led up to that moment. And again, a lot of it is personal stuff, but there was just so much about the film that I started to realize why I connected with this story so much. Obviously, because of Frog's story, but there was just so much about the film that I connected with here that having to hear all the wonderful insights about what it took to make the films, Patricia's awesome set of info about Mike's suggestion and David's music. It was something that I found to be extremely fascinating that amplified my love for the film that much more. And to see the story flesh out the way that to flesh itself out the way that it did in a short span of time and have that impact on me, I knew that this story wasn't just another story, if that makes any sense. This is something really good, something really special to me personally that I wanted to share with everybody else because I believe in the story so much, and I believed in what Patricia and what Mike and what David, what Tom, the kids in the film here too, Alex who played Maria, like everything that everyone had done in this movie. I believed in them so much that I could not help but say I gotta bring more awareness to this movie because to me, everyone that worked on this film are artists, and I saw a masterpiece. And I think this movie is so beautiful, so good that I felt compelled to share this story, to share this film with everybody. Because I want people to watch this movie and walk away with the same feelings I got, if not more. Because I think it's that good of a story, it's that compelling of a film that when you watch it, that you feel you can grow from it, if that makes any sense. So when I saw the movie again after my conversation, I broke down and cried because everything that led up to that moment just finally came out. Because I work really hard not to cry in films. I don't like to cry in movies, although I don't mind it, but I just don't want to cry. But I definitely have learned a lot about myself from watching this film and my conversation with Patricia, and then watching the film again. It started to make a lot more sense. Like, I mean, a lot of ways kind of come full circle. So this is a film that I will always cherish and I will always carry with me and I will always champion because the people behind that made this movie, in my opinion, made one of the greatest films of all time. And I'm not blowing smoke when I say so. I love this movie. It is that good. So hopefully you guys enjoyed and hope you guys will have a wonderful day And stay safe out there, guys. Stay safe out there, I meant to say. And cheers.